We deemed Mr. Campion to be the most dangerous man in Hampshire, and I nudged my brief and said, who the f*** have they got in Dorset?
The Royal Marines
P Company.
and the SAS. So you got the hat trick.
Yeah, they were grand slammed. I didn't come across people that I respected, and it could have so easily gone the other way. Do you know what I mean? I had a junior criminal record for violence. When you go and do your job for real, there's an enemy there, and if you don't get things right, he's going to smack the back of your head out all over the floor. If you want to know what selection is like, speak to a soldier that's passed and not a soldier who's failed. Put me in a cell, and I thought, well, I'll be here tonight. Tomorrow morning came, I'm still there. I'm charging him for attempted murder.
There's obviously the Who Dares Wins TV show,
Which was my idea, by the way. Took my ideas off me, took Hunted, took Who Dares Wins. I think the IRA summed up with Northern Ireland. I think it was Martin McGuinness said, we've only got to be lucky once, you've just got to be lucky all the time. I wanted to be kicking doors down and going after the bad guys. I wanted to be meeting them head on. Speak out, say something to anybody, a stranger if you want to. Get it out there. Nothing's going to happen to you. I don't take pride, I don't not take pride. I just, I like to think that the job I've done has made the world a better place.
Welcome back to the Criminal Connection podcast, and this episode is proudly brought to you by Betovo. Welcome back to the Criminal Connection podcast. My name's Terry Stone, aka the Podfather. Today we're joined by a Special Forces veteran, a legend. Please put your hands together for Mr. Big Phil Campion's in the house.
Cheers.
Woo!
Yeah. Whoop, whoop.
Good to see you, Phil.
Yeah, cheers, bud.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, good to see you.
Do you know something? I think anybody that follows obviously the Special Forces will be aware of obviously you. I know you're really big on social media and YouTube with your Forces
Force
YouTube
radio,
channel.
yeah, obviously. Yeah.
And that's also on radio as well.
That's a radio station, yeah.
So
It's a digital radio station. You can literally download the app, or you can listen to it on your whatever you can get the internet on. You can get our radio station on.
Amazing.
Yeah, it does all right.
I don't know anybody who's passed the Royal Marines selection.
Yeah,
and got
Commando
the Green Beret,
course, P Company.
and the SAS. So you got the hat trick of all three.
Yeah, they were grand slammed.
Was there anything else you wanted to do?
No, it was the few things. Yeah, the only one I didn't want was one of those red ones that said RMP on it. Wasn't after that one. They was after me.
But obviously, because you did the Marines and you did the parachute regiment, what led you to the SAS and not the SBS?
I was primarily in the army, and although I did the commando course, I was still what's classed as an army commando.
Right.
So I wasn't a Royal Marine. So I'd have been happy actually at one stage to have just transferred to the parachute regiment. I felt like I wanted to go there. It was a unit that suited my needs, active, a great place to be. But selection was always sort of like dangling in front of me, and I passed P Company, and I actually approached some general. He ended up as a general, but he was a brigade commander. He was a brigadier then. Johnny Holmes, his name was. And I said to him, look, can I join the parachute regiment? Well, I've completely broken every sort of like rule there was. I'm supposed to go through my platoon, and I've gone straight to the big fella. Like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, I got a massive bollocking from the regiment. Right. From my old place, the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment, which is a fine regiment, by the way. And I just said, no, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm going. Well, what do you mean you're going? Well, the two I see at the time said to me, look, you've reached your ceiling in an afternoon. He said, you've really upset the boss, do you know what I mean? He said, so you've done yourself no favours. He said, I suggest you either go to Civic Street or you go Special Forces. And I went, well, Special Forces it is then. Do you know what I mean? I love some of that.
Because I know the reason I asked you...
Massive sweepstake on Big Phil not passing, by the way, from them. You know what I mean? He's a twat, do you know what I mean?
But you did it first time, right?
Yes, yeah, I did, yeah.
And obviously, going through that whole thing, we've sort of brushed over on it, really.
Yeah.
But if we go back to before you was in the army,
yeah.
Where was you actually brought up?
So I was born in London to a family that couldn't keep me, so I was adopted, and I was taken almost sort of like a 6-month point down to Southampton, where I grew up in Southampton on an estate called Harefield. Yeah. And it wasn't the best of times, if I'm honest. My father was a drunk. He was sort of like same sort of stamp as what I am now, but when I was small, he used to beat the crap out of me. Like, he used to absolutely beat the granny out of me, and the woman, the mother, used to try and step in, but absolutely no use. I mean, she'd get a backhander and all, and when she finally managed to jog him on, she turned funny and all, and she used to belt me and all. So it was like, I don't know, I just felt throughout my whole childhood, never met anybody I wanted to be like.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I never looked at anybody and thought, I want to be like you one day.
I suppose if you're coming home and you're wondering who's going to beat you up, tonight. You know, it's
it wasn't
it's not
great.
Miserable.
Yeah, and I wasn't the best behaved child. I'm going to be honest. You know what I mean? I was a little
kind
kid.
of asked for it.
Yeah. But I didn't ask for it to the extent that I got it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. No child should ever be put through that. Do you know what I mean? I agree with disciplining children and all that sort of stuff, but sitting on them and smacking them till their nose is broken, that's overkill. A bit too much, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then, basically ended up through a series of sort of like thrown out of school, all that sort of stuff. Ended up in a public school for a bit.
Right.
Because they decided I had a high IQ, so the state paid for me to go there, but that didn't really work out because all the other kids were sort of like being paid. You know what I mean? It was just, don't know, everywhere I turned, and then ended up in children's homes. And as I've documented now, got in the fucking children's homes. You know what I mean? So that wasn't the best of times either. Although, you know what I mean? It was just horrendous. And that.
Do you know we had a guy called Stephen French. I don't know if you know that is.
No.
He was the kind of guy from Liverpool.
Yeah.
Karate expert. He got involved obviously in debt collecting and robbing drug dealers. I mean, he's got an amazing story.
Yeah.
But he had the same thing where he was in children's homes, and he got Jimmy Savile actually. You know, about him, and he was very proud to let me know that he had one of them little kids' fire engines, and he actually smashed Jimmy Savile in the eye and cut his eye open.
Yeah, nice.
And he was very happy about that.
Yeah, but, I would be happy about that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never got that. The abuse was all, he used to get it out in front of me and all that sort of stuff, do you know what I mean? So it never got too close, and I've always managed to sort of like swerve the last bit, do you know what I mean? But it was just honking. You know,
it's shocking,
a
really.
depraved, horrible fucking world. From a man who was actually in the community, when the kids, he was respected. He was like he was the headmaster of the school unit that was there, and he was in an activities centre, and everybody liked him, and everybody was like, he's dead now. And before he died, he actually one of his stepchildren, I think, and got caught, and he did a bit of bird and all that.
For me, I mean, we've only really, I'd say, over the past decade, become aware of how bad all this stuff was.
It's been so taboo. The reason I spoke about it in the first place, I didn't speak to it. I must have been about 48. It wasn't long ago,
right?
And I was literally giving a talk to the NHS and some other people that were responsible for children, and what they wanted was someone who made a success from the care system.
Right.
And the bloke before me was talking about in the system and all that, and he said basically, I wish more people would step forward and speak about their experiences, because until they do, we can't really find out what's going on.
Right.
And I'd written this big speech, big happy ending. Big Phil went in the army, had a great life, all this sort of shit, you know what I mean? And I thought, that's a load of fucking dog shit.
Right.
That's a load of shit. I thought, that is absolutely crap, because basically, I had a fucking hard time when I was in care. I was exposed to this, exposed to that. It followed me out. I'm going to let him have it. And I thought, and I'd never spoken to anybody about this before, not even my fucking missus. Nobody in my life knew that this had happened. And I was walking up to the fucking lectern, ripped my speech in half, said, right, listen in, room with about 200 strangers, never spoke to anyone before in my life, and told them all about how. Right. And I'm like, at the end of it, I was sort of like, ooh. The old mic dropped me.
Should I have said that?
And the room was silent. Anyway, they wanted me to stay for a bit and talk and all that sort of stuff, and I had to get to the phone. I phoned my missus up, put her on speakerphone, put the phone in the cradle, and cried like a baby all the way home.
Was there a reason why you never spoke about it, Phil? Was it just because it was so traumatic? You just didn't want to
the way that it was sold to me by the perpetrator, the main one, was, you're the scum in this arrangement. You're the one who's here because you can't behave, and I can make your life extremely difficult if you don't, or if you say anything. Do you know what I mean? So I was under no illusion that if I said something or spoke out, I'm going down the pan, because nobody's going to believe the scum. Do you know what I mean? You are the scum in this arrangement. You're an absolute piece of shit. And I'm like, I just sort of like thought, right, just blinking myself to it to a certain extent and just hope it goes away. And it didn't go away, and it just kept happening. And you're like, well, just one day. And it wasn't until really, the only time I really felt safe for the first time was that day I joined the army, and we drove through the camp gates, and I remember watching the barrier go up, and then it went down behind us, and I thought, get me in here, you twat. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Ain't gonna happen, is it?
So the army, really, for you, that was your family?
It was, yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah. I looked on it as that was my life, not just my family, that was my whole life.
Right.
The army, when I finally got in, it was everything. It was my everything. It wasn't just, do you know what I mean? I didn't really have, my adopted parents had split up. He moved out. My adopted sister wasn't there anymore really in any capacity. Didn't really get on with her. So they were out of it. My adopted family I didn't know, so they were out of it. And everybody else I've met in life have been a complete arse to me. Do you know what I mean?
And I suppose really for you, Phil, I mean, when you went through that, all those set of experiences, you didn't really want to keep in contact with any of them people. It was literally like just go like that.
But there were people along the way that perhaps I would have, and subsequently since, funny old thing, as soon as your head goes above the parapet, a couple of them come back into your life, like, do you know what I mean? And I don't mind that. And there was a couple of people from my childhood that actually you probably could have said, if I'd have concentrated a little bit, I wouldn't have minded being like you. Do you know what I mean? So I'm a little bit harsh with that. But I think on a whole, I didn't come across people that I respected at all. And it could have so easily gone the other way. Do you know what I mean? I had a junior criminal record for violence. And I think violence had bred violence in me. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't mind a little bit of argy-bargy now and again, like, do you know what I mean? So I was quite happy to hand it out, do you know what I mean? Because that's how everything had ever been dealt with to me.
And when you look back on, what you went through, and obviously lots of kids now are on social media, right? So they're not meant to be watching this show, but obviously for us, we're always interested in spreading awareness.
Yeah.
And if you could send a message, Phil, to any of those kids or anybody that's in that sort of cycle of abuse, whether it's really bad or whether it's just getting to, because they normally do it in stages.
Speak out, say something to anybody, a stranger if you want to. Yeah. Get it out there. Nothing's going to happen to you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? They ain't going to get it their way. Get it out there. If you are being abused, somebody needs to know, because it's not right. And as much as they'll tell you it's right, and this guy used to say to me, he used to go, "This is the therapy I use. It's a shock tactic. It works. But you dare say anything to anybody, you're a fucking nuts." Right. Do you know what I mean?
Basically,
you are a wrong 'un. You're a fucking wrong 'un, aren't you? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Dress it up however you like, son. Right. You're a wrong 'un. But when you're that person, you're the vulnerable one, and you are the scumbag, and you realise that, it's fucking hard to say anything to anybody. But it penned up inside me for years.
And I've noticed, again, recently, as this has become more in the public domain and people are sort of more aware of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, people aren't as, like when we grew up, you could go outside and your mum and dad would say, "Oh, you walk to school, walk home, play in the park." Now it's sort of like, "Where are you? Don't walk in the park, don't play in the park." Make sure you're with your friend. Like everybody's super aware.
It's disgusting. Do you know what I mean? But it's a necessary evil to keep an eye on where your children are all the time. Do you know what I mean?
But there's also these groups now, isn't there, which they call them sort of like hunters, don't they? Where they try and entrap these people online.
And I'm probably not against that. And then you look at it and you go, some of the people that they entrap have got serious fucking issues themselves, and that's a problem within a problem, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You're already a problem, and you're also I mean, Jesus Christ. Oh, do you know what I mean? It's horrendous, isn't it? Right. Do you know what I mean? And I think if you look at it in the cold light of day, you would argue that not enough is being done because these people are still out there.
100%.
You know what I mean? There needs to be some sort of serious, even deterrent. But I believe in some ways it's deeper than that. That bloke gets turned on, or that woman gets turned on by what they see. That ain't never going to change. You can't talk that out of somebody. If you get an hard on looking at tits, you get an hard on looking at tits. If you get an hard on looking at that, that's what you get an hard on looking at. Right. Chop it off. Get rid of it.
Right.
Castrate it. It can be done in a humane way. It can be, get rid of it. That gets rid of the problem overnight.
Come for, let's start a movement.
That's it. The chopper.
Phil the Chopper.
It's true. Do you know what I mean? There is a cure. There is a cure.
Phil the Chopper Campion. It's got the solution
the block.
to all your problems.
Yeah. But it is.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And having been,
right.
It lived with me for fucking years. It's still there now, but because I've spoken about it, it isn't so bad, so it's contained. But if there's a problem to a solution, it's not inhumane. The people will argue that it's inhumane. It's not inhumane to castrate someone who is.
Probably is that are saying that.
I don't know. There seems to be more groups set up to protect these people than what there are the people that suffer.
Right, that is true.
And that's probably a fact if you look at it. I don't know. I'm not going to quote a fact, but that's where we're at with that, isn't it?
So when you ended up, going into the army, and like you said, you found your home.
Yeah.
And obviously, like you said, you was in that regiment. You did your Royal Marines thing, but you weren't actually in the Marines. But then you did your P Company thing.
Yeah.
And then you sort of went, actually, if I've got to go or go to Special Forces route, I'll go to Special Forces route. And lots of people, I mean, there's been that recent TV series which, the early beginnings with David Sterling and the SAS.
Yeah. The rogue heroes and all that sort of stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And there was, and that from a historical perspective was great. And then obviously there's all these different SAS guys. There's obviously the Who Dares Wins TV show.
Which was my idea, by the way, but we'll cover that. Yeah. Robbed by Channel 4, a guy called David Glover, and I'll spell his name. David Glover was a commissioning agent for Channel 4, had me in, took my ideas off me, took Hunted, took Who Dares Wins, and absolutely wrote me out of it. So cheers for that, David, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, David.
I don't begrudge the others who are on the show now because they've done a good job, and I think they've done it credit. Do you know what I mean? They've done an extremely good job. It's an extremely good show, and fair play to them. I would have done the same, but yeah.
But I think that TV series, and obviously all these people at Annie McNabb and Chris Ryan that have written these books, and obviously you've written your book as well, and your sort of fictional novels. So I think there's always been this fascination with special forces, and you know, for you, you know, when you actually went up for selection, has it changed much from when you went into to now? Is it pretty much the same?
I don't know, because I'm not really privy to what goes on now. Do you know what I mean? I know what happened in my day, and it hadn't changed that much. I would imagine that the sort of like, the actual sort of like breaking up of the person and seeing if he's fit and testing his aptitude is not going to change much. You know, put a large pack on, walk him, keep him walking, put more weight in, keep him walking, and see how long you can do it for. Do you know what I mean? Right. And that's going to break or make the man. Tactics will obviously change slightly, won't they? Because technology's changed. So, for instance, now you've got night vision and all that sort of stuff, and drone technology and all that sort of stuff. So, the pure soldiering aspect of it in the jungle might have changed. I don't know. It might not have done. They might have thought, right, we'll get the basics done properly, and then we'll concentrate on the Gucci shiny stuff later on. Like, do you know what I mean? So, yeah, stuff would have changed slightly, but it certainly won't be any easier. Right. I wouldn't have thought. I'd be very surprised if they went, oh, no, let's just chop standards just because we can. You know? Ain't going to happen, is it? You know what I mean?
Right. And
I'm a massive supporter of the regiment. You know what I mean? I think they do a tremendous job, and I think they have to keep their standards as high as physically possible.
Yeah. I mean, I've every time I've been up to Hereford, or I've been around any of the serving members, it always shocks me at how crazy their lives are, you know, and you know, I watched a speech when I was up there, and it was all about, you know, when you pass selection, you don't really pass selection. You're still on trial.
No, you're on probation for a year. You're on probation for a year.
Yeah, so just because
some would argue things get harder once you pass selection, and certainly, you know, at selection, no point does anybody trying to kill you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So when you go and do your job for real, there's an enemy there, and if you don't get things right, he's gonna smack the back of your head out all over the floor. Do you know what I mean? So that's the reality of it, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. And when you so for you going through selection, you, like you said, you passed first time.
Yeah.
But how hard was that?
Right. So the trade-off for me, there's a trade-off. The hills, yeah, it's hard because it's every day. You've got this great big green monkey on your back. You're up and down the hills. You're digging out blind. You don't know when you're going to finish. You don't know when you're going to start. Right. You're all day going to the next checkpoint. It's tedious. It's monotonous. Your fingernails are bleeding. Do you know what I mean? Your toenails are gone. Your back scuffed to pieces from your Bergen. I had a dislodged retina to come the end of it. You know, one of my toes had a fracture on it. You're in clip. You know what I mean? You're in proper turbo clip by the time you finish it. But if you can get through that, that means that you've got the resilience within you to go to the jungle. Right. The jungle again, superb.
And we're not talking about I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here, are we?
No, we're not talking about I'm a no bush tucker trial. Yeah, so, you know, then the jungle will test your soldiering ability.
Right.
You'll be taught basics, and all Special Forces soldiering is the basics done well and properly. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And making sure that the man is going to do what he's supposed to do and is capable of carrying out, you know, instruction and all the good stuff. Do you know what I mean? And testing his self-discipline and making sure that he's not going to let you down at the end of the day, because that's what they want, soldiers that aren't going to let them down, that are capable of doing what's going to be asked of them.
And when you did the jungle, what was that like for you, Phil? Was that...
So this was the trade-off I was on about. So the hills was honking. Right. Every day, you know, the rain's horizontal, it snows, it pisses, it winds. It's just, Wales is an absolute, you know what I mean, for that. I love Wales. I love Wales, but once you go above sort of like 10 feet, it's a shithole. Like, you know what I mean? It just wants you dead, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Right. So you then think to yourself, right, you go to the jungle, and although you've got all that times 10, plus it rains every day, plus you're wet, cold, you've got animals, you've got things biting you, you've got bushes that grab hold of you, like, do you know what I mean? The place is just, but now you're soldiering. Now I've got a proper gun in my hands, and now I'm walking around, I'm actually doing stuff now. Do you know what I mean? This is real. This is testing me as a soldier. So I was learning so much in there that the hardship, who cares? I'm soldiering. I'm doing the stuff, like, do you know what I mean? So that for me was a sort of like leveler. on the hardship. So people, and if you don't enjoy it, you won't fucking stay, and you'll go back and you'll go how hard it was and how impossible it was. And that's where all these stories come from. So I always say to young people nowadays, if you want to know what selection is like, speak to a soldier that's passed and not a soldier who's failed.
Got it.
Because selection is all about finding out if you actually want to be there. Because if you don't, you will not last the distance. You can't bluff your way through selection. You can probably do it for a couple of weeks. You might even get as far as the trees.
Right.
But I had a mate of mine went all the way through the trees to the end and stick his hand up and goes, not for me.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? Not for me, this. You know what I mean? And that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of courage. That's to me, that's as good as the man that passed who didn't really want to be there but couldn't stick his hand up. He's got a lot more courage, hasn't he?
And then when you did that, you're out of the jungle.
Yeah.
And after that, is that when you sort of, it's like being in the mafia, you get made, you're like, well,
no, not for a bit. Yeah. So then you got other disciplines that you need to complete, escape and evasion, persistence with interrogation, a bit of parachuting to be done, a few odd bits and sods, odds and sods. You know what I mean? So, and even when you get your beret, ours was no sort of like cause for celebration. There was no trumpets. There was no
Someone
sort
said
of like,
they just go on, mate.
Mate, it wasn't simply that. We were sat at the front. What was left of the course, and I can't remember exactly who was left on the course, but it wasn't enough to fill the front row of the auditorium, right? Wow. And the CO came out. He made some blinding speech about what cunt were. Do you know what I mean? We just scraped through, and we were lucky to be there, and then tossed a berry at each one of us. There you go. Right, cheers for the jokes. Go and get your work done.
Right.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for that.
I mean, it is the whole thing's potty in it, really, when you think about it, because you've gone through all of that stuff. But
you go through so although as much as you want, as soon as you put that berry on your head, you want your chest to puff out.
Right.
You're going to go and join a squadron of blokes that have seen some serious action. Do you know what I mean? You're the bottom of the pole. You're number 8 on the wire cutters. You've now been demoted to the fucking tea urn. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that. Who wants a cup of tea? Do you know what I mean?
and once you got your beret, then you get. Can you apply for which unit, or do you get allocated to a unit?
No, I mean, in our day, you knew whether you was going SPS or SAS, and then within the SPS, you got allocated your squadron and your troop.
Right.
I think slightly before you actually got badged. So
Okay.
you got like a dream sheet came round, and you go, I want to go to D Squadron Mountain Troop, or I want to go to fucking A Squadron Air Troop.
So talking about the four troops,
yeah.
What does each one do?
Right. So the only difference in they all do the same thing.
Right.
Like they all soldier. They all do this. They all do that. It's the insertion skill. So people get a bit hung up on it when they talk about these troops. Air troops specialise in a parachute insertion. Right. So it's not the soldiering end of it. It's just how we get onto the battlefield. All right. So that's the insertion skill. Is the parachuting. Boat troop exactly the same. Their insertion skill is in boats. Right. And mobility and mountain is anything that's going over the hills and that sort of stuff. It's not to say that if you're in air troop, you won't go over the hills.
Right, of course.
Or if I'm in boat troop, I won't go parachuting. It's to say that the person that's specialised in that will lead that. Right. Do you know what I'm saying? Right. And then after that, once you're into theatre, then it's pot luck who's going to get what. Do you know what I mean?
And when you did your first bit of work where you actually got deployed, can you talk about that particular thing, or is that?
Not massively, because it was a field that's not really out in the public domain. But paged on the old pages that time in the camp. You know what I mean? Right, grab your kit, off we go, and that was it. It was. Whilst I was there, and I was only there for about 5 years. Whilst I was there, we did do a fair amount, but we didn't do nowhere near what they were doing after I left. You know what I mean? They were all over the place after I left.
I mean, that's probably one of the things which a lot of people don't realise. I mean, if you're in that regiment or the SPS or the Delta Force, you are 24/7 really, aren't you? Because there's so much stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean,
if you're not there, you're there. If you're not there, yeah.
If you think that period where they had Iraq, Afghanistan, there's probably still bits and pieces going on elsewhere in the world. Africa always gives you a payday. Do you know what I mean? There's loads of stuff going on. So. Guys are literally going from one to the other. And don't forget, you still got to train people. You still got to have a bit of respite. You still got to try and, so extremely barking.
So is there anything you can? Because I know there was one of the things that you worked on that you was talking about. I think it was called Certain Death. Or something.
Yeah, Operation Barras. So that was the rescue of the Royal Irish who got themselves pinched in Sierra Leone and. Right. Yeah, there's loads of stuff written about that, so I can talk to that about that to a certain extent. But again, my job was
I was going to say, if they'd have rung you up and said, "Oh, Phil, we've got a job for you. It's called certain death." It's not something you go, "I'll sign up for that." Or was that what was it? It was renamed basically.
It was renamed. So the job was called Operation Barras.
Right.
But when the plans went in and were submitted, and we looked at what we actually had to do, it was a bit of a piss take. This is Operation Certain Death. Like, right. He's like, who the is going to sign off on that? Do you know what I mean? And it was signed off on. It was the only option that we had. So
wow. Yeah,
basically, it was. We're in the jungle. We've got to try and rescue people that are in a jungle camp, surrounded by enemy. The choices are we could try and walk there, but that ain't going to happen because it's too noisy. We could come up the river by boat. That's not going to happen either. There's too many of us required. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to just fly into the middle of the camp, debus, and have it with them. Like, do you know what I mean? Really? Insane. But that's what we did. So, and that was the option.
And did the SAS lose a lot of men on that, or was it?
We lost one on the ground that day. But we actually lost two on the recovery because when we were told about it, we were out in Kenya, and on the recovery, one of the troops had a car accident and two lads died in that. So I always say we lost 3 people on that. When
right, wow.
Actually, anything else you read on it historically wise would say, well, they lost one.
And
guy.
if you look at the SAS, it's not like a massive unit, is it?
No, it's not. It hits to the core. Every last casualty hits to the core of everybody. Do you know what I mean? You'll probably know just about. You'll know everybody. You'll know most of them.
I know you you probably can't speak about specific operations, but could you share one of the maddest things you've done when you was in the regiment?
One of the maddest things I've done. One of the most surreal things I've done was the plane that came into Stansted that time with the on it. Years ago, the plane came from Afghanistan. Russia didn't want it. Flew over Germany. They said, "No, we don't want it," and it ended up in Stansted. You know what I mean? And we was on that job anyway. Long story short, I remember I got myself in a position where I did one of the food drops to the back of the plane, and it was just there was a bloke there, and they didn't even have balaclavas, so he looked like he'd made his balaclava out of a stripy jumper, like, do you know what I mean? It was a black and white stripy jumper. He looked like Bert and Ernie, like, you know what I mean? Right. He pulled this string at the top, so it looked like his hair. He looked like, "Hey, Bert," you know what I mean? It was hilarious. And I've got to go out with this food box. We drive out. We pretend that we're sort of like civvies, so you've got a donkey jacket on over your black kit and, your weapons are slung and all that sort of stuff. We drive out and we deliver this food to him. And I remember going, it was just so surreal, walking up face to face with a terrorist that you're thinking in your own mind, like, it's Bert and Ernie. You know what I mean? I'm always laughing at him. I'm like, do you know what I mean? Wishing deep down, I hope you kick it off, son, because everybody's coming. If that happens, you know what I mean? Everybody's coming in, and I'm going to get my hands on Bert. Do you know what I mean?
You'd have a little trophy picture. It's Bert.
Yeah, it'd be fun. But you had to pinch yourself with lots of the stuff you did, especially like some of the exercises you did. London Tube and places that you went and did stuff that you probably wouldn't expect to find someone there. Do you know what I mean? And you'd be like, "What the fuck am I doing here?" Do you know what I mean? It's like
the thing is, though, I suppose London is the whole place is a target, isn't it? So
people have got to know, people have got to see, people have got to understand the ground, the lay of the land, and get the vibe. I get that. I did my bodyguarding course, and we did an exercise in Prague, and we worked with their special coppers over there. And we're carrying not live rounds, but we're carrying pistols, but they've got blanks in them. Right. But if you saw me firing it, you'd think he's shooting someone.
Right.
We're going up to this museum in the centre of Prague, tourists everywhere, and the police think, "Oh well, we'll attack them now." Right. So we're sort of like drawn in the middle of in Prague, and it's like typical Eastern Bloc from the old days. Everybody disappears, like, you know what I mean? The whole street goes.
It could have gone the other way. One just starts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it's on.
The blanks.
Yeah, and the police. Yeah, it was just crazy. We had sort of like there was obviously people watching over it, but. Yeah, well, and I was just thinking, I'm in the middle of this touristy area,
right,
with my pistol out, running down the road with this fake VIP. Right. Yeah, mental.
Yeah,
absolutely mental. So you did do some crazy stuff.
Yeah,
some of the jumps you did, some of the jumps that you did, parachuting, and I didn't do a lot of parachuting. I hated it. I wasn't very good at parachuting. But you found yourself, jumping over Norway onto the lakes, and at night, stood on the ramp like. am I doing here? Why am I here? I mean, this is ridiculous. It was cool. It was good. It was a great job.
When you actually first saw some proper action, and obviously, I know when you're deployed, it's not to, play cards or happy families with people.
Yeah.
It's to take people out. When you did your first, sort of thing where you had to deploy lethal force, I mean, how did that make you feel? Did you literally, because you're trained, it just...
No, I'm all right with it. I've been asked this before, and I'm pretty okay. Look, nobody's ever asked me to shoot at anybody that was doing nice things in the world. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like they're going, right, get yourself down to Sainsbury's, Phil, and take out as many as you can.
Is it an old lady?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So just start a packet of
That's not happening, is it? Do you know what I mean? They're going, right, these people are serious, hard lunatics. Do you know what I mean? Or they're so you're not being asked. So actually, in my own mind, we're doing the world a favour.
You're like a vet putting animals to sleep.
Yeah, we're doing a favour. You're doing the place a favour. It's not. Right. I mean, I don't take pride. I don't not take pride. I just, I like to think that the job I've done has made the world a better place.
100%.
So not, and that's, I don't need to deal with anything.
No. The reason I was asking because when you do that training, and like you said, because it's so intense, and like you said, you're at the top of the game, and obviously, soldiers have guns and they shoot people. But I didn't know the first time when you actually did it, whether it was just literally whether the army actually give you a way of processing it, or whether you just process it yourself.
See, in my day, the mental health side of thing wasn't really spoken about. It was, I do remember it was like as if people had gone, anyone got a problem with that?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It was like, it wasn't really spoken about.
Right.
Nowadays, I think they do take it more seriously. Nowadays, I do think, perhaps people have suffered with it.
Yeah.
And not just, look, the thing that I mentally suffered with was an incident that, a friend of mine lost his life, but it wasn't in combat, and that made it worse for me. The way he lost his life, it was completely unnecessarily uncalled for, out of the blue. It should never have happened. And that fucking hurt me. That done me more mentally than perhaps losing someone on an operation, because you're on an operation, it's the big boys' rules there, and you're in that club. That's part and parcel of it, and, a man goes out gallantly fighting for his country, that's the time to stand up, salute. When a man goes out and, through no fault of his own, loses his fucking life, it's just fucking sad. Do you know what I mean? That really hurt me. That really pissed me off. Like, do you know what I mean? Because it was so unnecessary. I'm not going to go into details of the incident, but it really that gave me more mental problems than anything else.
Yeah. So from that thing on, like you said, the way you processed it for you, Phil, was they're bad people. I'm doing the world a favour, so
I'm not worried about that.
It's
I'm
my
not worried
day
about
job
that.
sort of thing.
It's not. It's they've put themselves in that position.
Right.
That's what they've done. So it's not. I don't have a problem with it. If you asked me to go into Sainsbury's and murder innocents, I wouldn't do it.
Right. Got it.
Simple as. You know what I mean? But it's not the case, is it?
Yeah.
These people are lunatics.
You did you do a bit in Ireland as well?
I've done, I did a bit in Northern Ireland. I didn't do much with the regiment in Northern Ireland, but I did sort of I spent quite a bit of time there.
Yeah.
In the normal army, I spent about 5 years there, I think.
I mean, a lot of people said that was a scary time because especially if you was.
I think the IRA summed up with Northern Ireland. I think it was someone like Martin McGuinness said, we've only got to be lucky once. You f***ers got to be lucky all the time.
Right.
And that was true. You every time you went out the gate, you ran a bit, and sometimes when you were inside the camp, you they could mortar you at any time. So you had there was an element of luck.
Yeah, I mean, did that? I know that they said that it all got worked out, but I mean, the IRA seems to have had a bit of a comeback of late. And,
looking at how I look at it, I don't think it ever really completely went away. I just think they stopped doing what they were doing.
Right.
These people don't just melt into the background overnight and I'll be a butcher now. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There's still an undercurrent of activity of some of something going on for them. I don't know. It's certainly it still manifests. There's still divide lines, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? There's still gates that they shut every night because they don't want people from this estate walking onto that estate.
Right.
So the very fact that they're doing that says that there's still a problem, isn't there?
And in your time, obviously in a regiment, like you said, you didn't really do anything much in Ireland, but you did a lot in Africa.
Bosnia, the Balkans was open. I went over there a few times. So yeah, and obviously stuff in the UK with the said incident with the plane. So
yeah, I mean that's the Balkans and that sort of Eastern Europe stuff. I mean, someone explained it to me, and they said that over there it's like they will just kill your kids and chop people's heads off. It's a different level.
There's nasty people. There's not. See, this is what people don't understand sometimes over here. There's nasty people in all these places in the world, and I've been to, even as a civvy.
Right, listen up, you lot. Here at the Criminal Connection podcast, we like to keep things sharp. Stories, suits, and skin. And that's why I've got to put you onto something proper. It's called the BioLux LED mask. I know what you're all thinking. An LED face mask. What am I? Of Love Island? No, this ain't fluff. This is tech with teeth. We're talking 8 LED colours plus infrared, clinically certified, smart sensor tech and voice controls. It's wireless, lightweight, safe for all skin tones, built like a Bentley. Acne, aging, dull skin, sorted, 288 lamps. Not one of them wasting your time. And get this, for the Criminal Connection crew, BioLux are doing you a right touch. £30 discount when you use their exclusive link. Plus, a portion of every sale goes to a charity that we are backing. So you're looking good and doing good, and that's the real glow up. So don't mug yourself off. Head to bioluxuk.com, grab your LED mask, and tell them the Podfather from the Criminal Connection podcast sent you, or click on the link below and get involved. Your face will thank you.
Right. I went to Iraq, Afghanistan, Gaza, all over West Africa. So I probably did more war zones as a civvy. Right. Do you know what I mean? On the private, there are nasty, horrible people over there. You're not playing games. They're not living by the same rules as you live. And when things go noisy, they go fucking noisy. They go proper. It's pear shaped. It's nothing you could even understand. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It's beyond.
So where would you say that? Like, if you was in to a trip advisor, psychopaths, where what would be the worst?
Probably Gaza.
Wow,
Gaza was absolutely insane. At the time we got there, in and out, it was just the place is crazy, and there's no respite from it. You're permanently under the threat from someone.
Right.
It's permanent. It's not. It's just a horrendous place.
I mean, with what's happening out there right now.
Yeah.
I know this has been going on for years, but do you think there'd be a solution there? Would you think?
I don't know. Not unless I don't see a solution, and I don't understand Middle Eastern politics. You need a brain like a small planet to even contemplate the periphery of it. It's insane. But it's the normal people. The normal people don't want it. Do you know what I mean? The normal people on both sides of the fence go, I don't want this shit. In some of these areas, it's the extremists that have got right in so deep that you can't even be seen to go up against them because you will be killed. Gaza runs its own rules. These people are fanatical about what they do, and if you go up against them, their rules are different to our rules over here. Yeah. Where it gets a mess is where they step over on each other. So whether you argue that, the Jews should be in Israel or not, whether you argue that, whether you go back to biblical times and decide, well, you actually asked to wander the earth and all that sort of stuff. Right. Did you have any right to go back? Whether you take that in consideration or not, the fact that you're prepared to fly people on little kites over and start murdering people in it means that you've got a major problem, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? So it's extremely complicated. And I feel really sorry. I've got friends on both sides of the fence. Right. And I feel extremely sorry for them because there's nothing they can do about it. Right. Nothing they can do about it. It's all out of their hands. Do you know what I mean?
Because someone said if you're obviously on the Israel side, you're brought up to hate Palestinians, and if you're on the Palestinian side,
there's definitely a hatred. Yeah, not everybody. So, like I say, there's a sort of like edge to each. There's an extremity on each side that absolutely preach that, hate it. Do you know what I mean? Can't see it any other way.
But what I'm getting at is it's like there's always been a division there.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people that are saying like Free Palestine. There's a lot of people that are against Israel. But when you actually look at it, I always look at it and I always think, because you've got those factions of people that, like you said, driving the hate. They don't actually want it to be sorted out. They want it to carry on.
Yeah, it's almost like they're just stoking the fire the whole time. And I don't know what's the ultimate aim. You think you're going to win? You think you're going to become the complete dominant? Right. It's not going to happen, is it?
Right.
And that's where, even, a lot of these conflicts, even the Northern, you could almost compare, not slightly, you could almost compare the Northern Irish thing.
Right.
You've got Catholic, Protestant stuff going on, haven't you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've categorised themselves by their religion. It's got nothing to do with religion, really. Do you know what I mean? It's got to do with the estates they live on and how they're being treated and how they perceive each other. But they've divvied up because of the religion. Do you know what I mean? So these people on the fence aren't getting as good as these people on the fence. So they want to have a pop at them, but they want to protect what they've got, so they have a pop back.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? To try and put it in layman's terms, I can sort of like get my head around it. But when you bring the politics into it as well, forget about it. I can't understand it. Do you know what I mean? I don't even begin to want to fucking understand it. Do you know what I mean? So I just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Move away. And I know that's not possible for some people, but
And obviously we've got the other stuff going on now with Putin and
Ukraine and all that sort of stuff. And look, that again, they've both backed themselves into a massive sort of like corner. Do you know what I mean? So Putin needs an off-ramp to keep his credibility. He needs to get something out of it. Zelensky needs to keep what he's got because he's just ploughed his country, stopped people escaping, told everybody they've got to go to war, pushed everything he's got on that front line. Yeah. If he gives something now, people are going to go, well, fucking hell, that was a waste of time. You could have just given him that fucking 8 months ago and had done with all this shit and nobody would have died.
Well, I remember when
it's political, isn't it?
I remember when it first started. And a friend of mine said, this is going to go on for years. It ain't going to happen. It's not going to get resolved.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it will go on for a very long time.
Because now you're sort of reading this stuff. And I always, when you read anything in the press, you always wonder how true it is. But obviously the UK are giving them missiles and the US are giving them missiles. And, Putin's now getting upset saying, it's an act of war. I mean, do you think that's just winding things up? Or
there's a lot of sabre rattling, isn't there, in these things? You know what I mean? Yeah. The act of war is, somebody actually
pressing the button.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's really, really complicated. The whole thing's just
because now Trump's coming in. They reckon he's going to sort it all out. I don't know. He's going to make America great again.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I think a lot of people were surprised that he's got back in again. I wasn't surprised he got back in. I think a lot of normal people nowadays just want somebody who'll stand up for sense and sensibility. Do you know what I mean?
And tells the truth.
Yes, it's not all this left wing and right wing and no.
Well, if you look at
let's just get right back to basics, down the middle of the line. Do you know what I mean? Right. And let's just do things in a good and proper way where everybody benefits.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've been made aware of this recently, but there's this petition now, isn't there, where they want to call for a general election. It's like, well, we're not going to. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Is it? It's not going to happen.
But when you actually look at what happened, the Labour government were pretty clear on what they weren't going to do, and I think they've probably done everything they said.
They've made a fist of things. They've made a fist of things already. And it's typical. Say what the people want to hear until you get what you've got, and then do what you want. Do you know what I mean? If I did that,
I did laugh though. There was some memes going around with I think David Lammy, Keir Starmer. There was a few of them that basically hated Trump, and they were like saying all this like really bad stuff. And there's all these celebrities in America all saying, "Oh well, if he gets in, I'm going to leave the country." And all this. But then obviously none of that's happened. So now these people are saying, "Oh yeah, no, Trump. I can't wait to see."
Well, they've read it, haven't they? Because they've read it wrong, haven't they? Do you know what I mean? The Labour Party have been accused of this, that, and the other, and whipping up a storm to try and get something. And he's in now.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's like booting someone who suddenly becomes the prefect. Oh shit! Oh, didn't want to do that, did I? Yeah. You know what I mean?
And when you was in, obviously going back into when you was in the regiment.
Yeah.
With the UK stuff, did you ever get anything where you had to deal with any sort? I mean, because there's a sort of line in there between organised criminals and terrorism, isn't there? So
yeah,
did you ever have to deal with any sort of organised criminals?
No, never seen anything like that. No.
Who normally deals with that? Is that normally the
That's
police?
got to be a policing matter.
Okay.
I mean, everything's a policing matter in the UK, but they have this thing where the military provide aid to the civil power or whatever it's called, and so they can apply. No, this is too much for us. We need some troops or whatever. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Because that was the other thing that when I was up in Hereford, the counter-terrorism unit, and I actually thought that was pretty cool that they can deploy, anywhere in the UK within, it's not very it's such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And if you were thinking of doing something bad in the UK, I mean, knowing how quickly they can respond, I mean, you probably have second thoughts.
Yeah, people will turn up fairly quickly. And to be fair, I mean, they work around the clock and probably prevent a lot more than you ever get to hear about. Do you know what I mean? So, they got their finger on the pulse and they got eyes everywhere. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's not, the fact that there hasn't been a major incident in the last however long it's been is testament to people putting in a lot of hard work.
Yeah. And because everybody gets a go on that, don't they?
You do it in my day. I don't know how the rotations work now, but you spent something like, I can't remember if it was 6, 8 or whatever it was, and you spent a period of time on the counter-terrorism team. Right. And of course, with that beforehand comes a bit of training to get yourself ready before you go on, and before you come off it, you've got to hand it over.
Right.
It's like I say, it's probably all changed now anyway. I'm not even allowed on camp on things since I wrote my book. Do you know what I mean? So, I've got no business on there. Do you know what I mean?
So when did you actually leave?
I left in 2001.
Right, wow.
So, it was the same week as the towers got hit.
Wow.
And I remember thinking to myself, you've done well there, Phil. Do you know what I mean, you idiot? Do you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, God.
I mean, what did you think about all that? Because, again, with all these things, there's always conspiracy theories.
I'm not into none of that. And I've been over there.
But what I mean is, like, when you look at New York, right, it's like London. If there was a plane flying over London and it wasn't on its flight path, you'd kind of think somebody would have noticed. Do you know what I mean? So it was.
I'm sure lots of people noticed, and to be fair, well before that happened, we'd spoken about the possibility of something like that happening.
Wow!
So it wasn't something that I looked at and went, "Wow, geez, look what they." I thought, "Oh God, they've done it," as opposed to, "Oh, I wonder." I knew that something like that could possibly happen.
Right.
Slightly sort of like, but I wasn't sort of like, "Wow, how did they even think about doing that?" No. I knew that was a possibility.
Well, I suppose if it's a pretty big statement to make, innit? If has the Parliament, Big Ben, Buckingham Palace, the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, all these places, if you hit them, then it's a big statement.
Yeah, of course it is huge, and that's that's probably still a concern now, I would imagine. Do you know what I mean? And it needs policing. That's what I'm saying. People work permanently around the clock.
Yeah,
permanently around the clock. To make sure that this stuff isn't happening, and that if something is transpiring, they've got their finger on the pulse, enough to prevent it happening.
And what was the reason why you because you said you was in, was it 5 years you was actually
coming on 5. So I struggled with a couple of things mentally. I drank too much in a bid to sort of like sort myself out, and I'm not going to blame it on that because I could be a pain in the arse. I could be a handful downtown. I could be a bit of a menace now and again. Although I like to think I was an extremely good soldier, which I think most people would agree with. I could also be an absolute fucking maniac downtown, like, do you know what I mean? Which I think people would also agree with.
That was a parachute regiment in you.
Couple that with a couple of incidents that I won't go right into here, but I did, I had a couple of incidents, and basically I PVR'd, I bought my way out. But it was because I felt I was going to be pushed out anyway. Do you know what I mean? So I felt, I was got to the stage where they're going to let me go or ask me to go back to my unit. So I'm just getting out. I've had enough.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So that was in 2001, and then when you actually left, I mean that must have been like getting divorced because like
worst day of my life. That I was devastated, and actually. Once I realised that there was going to be all this work, it wasn't a compensation, but at least I managed to go to Afghanistan. At least I was going to go to Iraq and all that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So at least there was a trade-off for me that I did get, 15 years of decent work.
Right. And that was as a mercenary, right?
Yeah, well, contractor, mercenary, whatever you want to call it. But, it was all.
But it's better. I mean, it's better pay, isn't it? I mean, I know
it was better pay, but I wanted to be kicking doors down and going after the bad guys. I wanted to be meeting them head on, the whites of their eyes, and having it proper with them. Like, do you know what I mean? And now I was reduced to training bodyguards and avoiding trouble and all that sort of stuff.
Right, okay, but you wanted to be right in the fun.
I wanted to be there. I wanted to go up against it. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't, so I was a bit devastated about that. Do you know what I mean? But I've always said in life, if you get dealt a shit sandwich, you stick the ketchup on it and get the fucking down because it ain't going nowhere, is it? Do you know what I mean? Get it down, because. You've got to make the best of what you've got. And I had a great time for 15 years, running in and out of war zones, doing this, doing that, doing the other. I got a little bit of adrenaline, do you know what I mean? I had a few punchy moments in my time, like, do you know what I mean? So, I got the odd round off here and there, do you know what I mean? I'm like, well, okay, all right, it hasn't been that bad, has it? Do you know what I mean?
Right. And but I take it because you was in the Special Forces, you're highly sought after, aren't you?
Initially, yeah. You weren't going to struggle for work. I did get to a point where I did get, I got in a little bit of trouble, and I think a combination of having too much money. I was making decent money, and I was drinking a hell of a lot on leave. I'd come home and I'd be like, ooh, you know what I mean? And,
right.
Then the boisterous starts coming out of me again. Like, you know what I mean? I must become, and I did. I ended up in Winchester, Nick, on a charge which was designed to keep me remanded in custody for a little while.
Wow.
It all got dropped in the end, but
Can you talk about the charge or not, or just?
Yeah, I got lifted. Initially, what happened was I had an argument with the missus at home. It got quite heated. Some twat could hear us yelling, so I threw a bed frame at him through the window in my house. Just threw it.
Right.
He called the police. I was screaming at him I was going to murder him, and
right.
I went back in, and then it calmed down. But then the police turned up. They wound it up a little bit, to be fair.
Right.
I heard the bloke that come up the stairs. He see one of my plaques, and almost a fucking SAS prick. Like, and they knew exactly who I was because they turned up mob-handed. There was loads of them turned up. Like, you know what I mean? Dragged me out. Had a little bit of a roll around on the way out, and then, like I say, put me in a cell. And I thought, well, I'll be here tonight. I'll get out tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning came. I'm still there. I'm thinking, what the fuck's going on? Like, I mean, in walks a copper. We're charging him for attempted murder. Really? Do you know what I mean?
Was it a photo frame? They're quite dangerous. Bed frame was quite dangerous.
Yeah, it was very dangerous. So anyway, I goes in front of the Beak on the Monday morning. This was Saturday. Sunday, I get told I'm being charged with attempted murder. By the time I speak to the duty lawyer, it's been dropped to attempted GBH, which I was actually really fucking devastated about because I'd like to think I could at least carry out a GBH if I'd attempted it. Like, do you know what I mean? You're making me look like a lunatic here. Like, do you know what I mean?
He wasn't really in the SAS. It's all a smoke screen.
Yeah. So we turned up in front of the Beak on the Monday morning. The three of them sat there, and they were determined. I was going to get remanded in custody.
Wow.
Absolutely determined. They were, this man's this man's that, he's done this, he's been in front of us before. When I was 14 years old, for Christ's sake, you know what I mean? But this didn't matter. They brought all this stuff up, and I didn't really have a defence at all. I had caused a ruckus.
Right.
So I was, as far as I was concerned, anyway, I think the thing that sealed it was the defence turned around and said, we deem Mr. Campion to be the most dangerous man in Hampshire. And I nudged my brief and said, who the fuck have I got in Dorset? Things you shouldn't have said. Like, oh dear. And I think they heard, like, that was it, you're off.
I love that. That's a great tagline, the most dangerous man in Hampshire. Hampshire's most wanted.
You're being remanded in custody, and off I went to Winchester, and then I was about 4 weeks in Winchester. The duty lawyer that I had managed to get me out. Then I got my own lawyer, and he got amongst them. I was on a tag for God knows how long while they sorted it out, and I couldn't work, and it rendered me useless.
Right.
I lost all my security accreditation. I couldn't work. I had no job, and I ended up as good as homeless in London. And when my brother couldn't put me up anymore and the tag was taken off, I wasn't allowed back to Southampton. So I was effectively homeless. I've got a friend of mine lent me a caravan, and I put it on a building site, and I was living on the building site, and I said, well, I'll be the security. They was paying me, I think they was paying me something like 50 quid a day to fill skips during the day and basically be the security for the house that it was at night. So I thought, well, this would do, like, do you know what I mean? And I thought, right, how can I can't do this for the rest of my life. I'm in my 40s and I'm filling skips. I mean, this is ridiculous. I'm like, what do I, £50 a day and 25's going back to me missus, like, do you know what I mean? So I saved up for a charity shop suit, and I bought this. I remember it was a Paul Smith suit. It was smart. It didn't fit me quite right, but it looked all right. Like, I'll get away with it. Right. And I bought this suit, and then I used to literally say, look, can I have enough time to go and get me dinner at night? Right. And my cousin was running it, so he's like, yeah, no problem, Phil. Just go and do what you got to do for a few hours. Make sure you're back here when it's dark, or So I used to disappear off into London, places like the Ivy and that, and I was just touting for anything. And I thought, right, f- it. All these attacks ended up happening, and I ended up speaking to the right person at the right time. Before you know it, I'm like the correspondent on Sky News. I've blagged my way on the... I'm there. Austin as Sky News special correspondent. Do you know what I mean? How ridiculous, whatever they, contributor or whatever it is they call you. Do you know what I mean? Right. And I'm there all the time. And before you know it, I've got my own fucking documentary, Big Phil's War. Do you know what I mean? And this has all come about because I just wouldn't have it. I'm not lying down. Do you know what I mean? I'm not having that. I'm not having it. And although I'd never ever intended to go into the media side of life and didn't even particularly. Didn't like it even. I thought, no, I've got to do something because I'm not settling for 50 quid a day tipping skips. Do you know what I mean? Not doing that. So that's how I ended up doing all the stuff that I do now.
This all happened after the mercenary bit, or did the mercenary bit happen?
Yeah, sort of like I'd spent about 10 or so years, and like I say, towards the end of it, I was drinking far too much, and I did have some problems. And this is why I'm so keen for people to speak up, because I bottled it up. Like I said to you, I bottled up all these problems in my head from when I was a child. My mate being killed, it was all there in my head, and I never spoke to anybody because I thought, well, when I was in, I thought if I speak to people, they're gonna chuck me out, and I ended up leaving anyway. Right. And then when I was out, I thought, well, if I sort of like air this opinion anywhere in fucking Civvy Street, well, you're not going to give me a gun and send me to Afghanistan, are you? You know what I mean? They're going to go, Jesus Christ, I tell you what, Phil, why don't you go and play in that padded area over there? Do you know what I mean? So I didn't want that.
You've got a jacket for
you. There you go, it fits well. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want that, and it scared me, and I thought, those are my options in my own mind, whereas what I should have done years ago is get talking to a doctor, explain how I felt, and get the thing sorted, and then go, right, it's fine, I'm done. Do you know what I mean? Right. But I think we're only just beginning to realise that if I took a soldier now and I break his leg, all right, you're going to walk around camp with that pot on, going to everyone, look at my pot, do you know what I mean? I broke my leg doing whatever I was doing, do you know what I mean? When that pot comes on, he goes back to the position he was, at the rank he was, and the job he was. Right. If I come off the wheel with my mental health, I might not go back to that job, to that position that I really wanted, that I did selection for. I might not be kept. I might be put somewhere else.
But we need to put you in the library.
yeah, exactly. Or you're going to go and count blankets for the rest of your life. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't want that. So I don't want to speak up. So until people realise that mental health is curable, and that you can retain your job and all that sort of stuff, people are going to bottle it up. And when they bottle it up, I'm living testament to, if you bottle it up, it's like putting a bag of Mentos into a Coke bottle, putting the lid on, shaking it, and then one day taking it off. Right. Because it fucking comes out. Do you know what I mean? It comes out.
And when you started doing this sort of news correspondent stuff for Sky, when did you do the was that when you sort of thought, well, actually, I might as well write the book, or did someone actually?
No, the book had already been done. So I did the book actually whilst I was still doing the mercenary stuff. And I'd never intended to do it. And I met this fella, Damien Lewis, and he'd asked me years before about an operation, actually, about Operation Barrows. I said, well, I can't write the book, Damien, but I can have a look at it and see what you've done, like all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's fine. And Damien said to me, well, do you want to write a book? I said, I've done all, Damien. I said, 5 years spent more time in the naffy queue than I did on ops. Like, do you know what I mean? I haven't done nothing, mate. You know what I mean? I've done a few bits and pieces. Right. You know, you can argue a little more than some, but not as much as others. But not enough to write a fucking book, and I didn't want to write a book anyway. Anyway, after sort of like 10 years on the circuit and having been to Afghanistan, Iraq, and I've been in a few little scrapes, and I had some funny stories and all that sort of stuff. Well, no, fuck it, we'll write a book.
Give us your best story out your book.
Oh, there's loads of stories.
Because then when we put a link in the bio down below so that people can buy the book, but if you've got a really good standout one.
There's loads of stupid little stories, like, do you know what I mean? The guy on the plane, so when I used to ship diamonds backwards and forwards to Dubai.
Ship diamonds?
Ship
diamonds. Ship diamonds. I was going,
they used to give me these back. I used to take these diamonds for this company over to Dubai for visitors and stuff like that. Right. And I remember this one time I was on the plane and I was sat next to this woman who just slept. And out of business class comes this posh couple of Arabs, right? And their son has clearly got something wrong with him. Like this, he's rocking and he's swaying and he's dribbling. And they sit him next to me and then off back into business class. I'm like, hell. Right. So I think to myself, right, I've got to get him out of here. Like, I've got to get him or her or someone out. I've got to get him out. I made a massive scene on the plane, like, do you know what I mean? Right. And then he ended up going to business class, right. And I ended up with 2 seats, like, do you know what I mean? But yeah, loads of just stupid little stories. So I've been around. One of my favourite stories was the marmalade jam. So
I want to say a huge thanks to our sponsors, Fragrance du Bois. Now, for those of you that don't know about Fragrance du Bois, where have you been? It is one of the leading luxury fragrances only available in Harrods, Selfridges and Neiman Marcus in New York. Every time I film an episode of the Criminal Connection podcast, every guest I've had have always said the same thing. Cool, Terry, that smells nice. What's that? And I say, it's fragrance de bois. And they go, what's that? And I give them a link, and I give them 10% off, and they buy a bottle. So make sure you get involved. For all the Criminal Connection podcast crew, we've got a special discount for you. 10% off. All you need to do when you click on the link below and choose your luxury fragrance is to put in CCPOD10 for the 10% discount. Just click on the link below to discover your signature scent today.
I goes to Gaza,
right?
And on the first day there, we're working in this little unit and a little cookhouse, and the guy says, Mr. Phil, Mr. Phil, what would you like for breakfast? I said, well, what you got? He says, well, I said, sausage bacon off the card over there. They're not going to get that. So I said, toast? I said, toast? He says, yes, I have toast. I said, marmalade? What is marmalade? I said, marmalade. I don't have marmalade. He said, I've got jam. He says, I've got jam. I said, no, I don't like jam. I like marmalade. Right. Oh, he says, I haven't got marmalade. So I think nothing of it. I'm there for quite some time. And on the about the second to last day that I'm there, I walks out to the cookhouse, makes me toast, sits down, fucking marmalade there. I turns around to him, I goes, oi. I said, Saeed, come here. I says, marmalade. He says, no. He says, orange jam.
If you didn't say orange jam in the first time, I know what you meant.
6 months with no marmalade. Just for him to think, we'll have orange jam today.
So obviously the book was a big success, wasn't it?
Yeah, the book done well. The book got into the Times top 4, I think it got into, like, do you know what I mean? So that did all right. And then the novels were great novels, but they didn't really go anywhere. My name was nothing then. And I wrote another book. Actually after I spoke publicly about the, because I thought, right, I need to get that out there. Yeah. I need to put that on paper and said that. So that was where Who Dares Wins came from, was me wanting to rewrite it with that included. Yeah. So I put a couple of stories that hadn't been in the other one in there and, talked about a little bit about some of the other stuff. It was the impact of not talking about it that I wanted to try and highlight to people and, say that, you can make a difference as an individual, but you've got to open your mouth, because if you keep it in, you
right. And I think that's a big takeaway. It's good to talk, and there's no value in bottling stuff up, especially
absolutely
if it's
no value whatsoever in bottling stuff up. It's hard. It takes a lot of courage to talk to people about it, especially, you'll feel shame. You'll feel like it was your fault. Yeah. You'll look at your own self. You'll take some of the blame in on yourself, and you'll ask yourself loads of questions. But you've got to get it out. You've got to get it. You've got to get it shared. You've got to let people know. And if you're suffering it right now, it will only stop if you say something about it, because all the time you're not saying something about it, you're playing their game, aren't you?
So when you spoke out about it, Phil, was there anything else that you did alongside that? Because a lot of people say, throwing yourself into exercise, getting out in the open, making sure you got a good friendship group. There's lots of other things you can do to help as well.
Yeah, I mean there is stuff you can do. Obviously once you've acknowledged it and you've spoken about it, getting my health back, my fitness back was a big thing for me, and I'm still training now. Do you know what I mean? I still train boxing. I started boxing.
What age did you start boxing?
My first fight was at 45 years old.
Wow.
And I'd always been around boxing. I'd always admired boxers. And I started refereeing, actually, for a mutual friend of ours, Danny, and I was doing refereeing. I thought, these lads are having a tear-up, right, and th're not getting in any trouble for it. Like, do you know what I mean? I thought, I'll have a go at that.
How many fights have you had then?
I had Rob, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that. Yeah.
Right. I take it you're 6-0.
I've drawn a couple, so I've drawn 2 of them. So yeah, but I've not lost one yet. So I haven't lost one yet. But yeah, I'll say yet, because it could always happen, couldn't it? And I am fighting again next year. So
wow.
But boxing for me gave me purpose.
Yeah.
And I've boxed out of some tremendous gyms. I've boxed out of the Peacock. I've boxed out of MTK Marbella. Right. I've been up to Ricky Hatton's place. I've boxed with Scott Welsh. So I've had some proper quality training. Like, do you know what I mean?
Ricky and I've really enjoyed it. Great, isn't
he? Yeah. So great people, and I'm still involved with them now. Do you know what I mean? So I've had some great boxing, but it gave me purpose. It gave me something to train for. You can walk into a boxing club and you can be the most aggressive man on the planet. eventually, if you keep up like that, you're going to get fucking ironed out, aren't you? You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter. So I use it. I can get a bit of aggression out. I can take it to whatever level. I'm always respectful of other people. I can up and down. I can fight people who are better than me. I can fight people who are worse than me. But I box within the ability of what's in front of me. Like, do you know what I mean? And it instills a lot of self-discipline. So people sort of like say, "Well, boxing is it's not a fuck sport at all. It's very much a man's sport. Who wants, or a sportsman's sport who wants to." For me, it was perfect. I could have a tear up. I could spar as many times a week as I wanted to. Do you know what I mean? I could train hard. I had purpose, and I had something to look forward to.
Yeah, amazing.
What a great thing to do. And we were raising money for charity. I mean, I think we raised about, all told, out of all my fights, I probably raised about £500,000 for charity.
Wow.
Wasn't I like? So,
what was the fight you organised at your call?
So that was the Navy SEALs. I fought a guy called Rob Paxman, ex-G Squadron. Good fight, raised some money, realised that this is something people want to see. They want to see SAS men fighting, do you know what I mean? And that's probably the only theatre you're ever going to see a SAS man fighting live, unless you're unlucky enough to be taken hostage and he rescues you. Do you know what I mean? So you're not going to see it as a normal person, are you? So my theory was, if I could get a team of SAS guys and then throw it out to America and see if they could bring a team back of our opposite number, what a great night that would be. And I did exactly that. Right. And I put more people in the York Hall than Frank Warren ever could put in there, I'm telling you. Do you know what I mean?
So it was SAS versus
Navy SEALs.
Navy SEALs.
Is how we build it. It was a great night. It was a great night. Sun newspaper got behind the first one. They sponsored it.
What was the end scores?
You know, I think we beat them, but there was a couple went against us.
Right, okay.
But we beat them. It was a great night. It was a great night. And then, like I say, the second one, and then Scott got involved, and we went down to Brighton, and we did it down in Brighton, and
because someone told me, and I don't know if this is true, but the Navy SEALs were actually the SAS basically give them the tools, and then they set up their
a
US
lot of
equivalent.
Yeah, right, not so much. Right, so a lot of the US Special Forces stuff is a derivative of them looking out and going, right, what are they doing? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
They've got their own stuff, and rightly so. You know, conflict over the last, few decades has brought them right up to where they need to be. You know, you could probably argue they hadn't done as much as other people. We always had our Northern Ireland, kept us going, and, with the guys, I think there's only been 1 year when the regiment hasn't been firing a shot at angle or something stupid. Don't quote me, but they've seen a lot of action. From the end of the World War, Borneo, Murbat, all these big battles they've had, do you know what I mean? So they've kept going. The Americans haven't had so much. They had their Vietnam and all that sort of stuff, but they didn't have a constant all the way through. So I think they caught up with the recent conflicts. And they're great units, great people, and I do know a few of them, blessed to know a few of them. They're great people, do you know what I mean? I do get asked a lot of the time, who's the best? And I'm never ever going to say anything other than the regiment. Do you know what I mean?
I did ask that question to someone in the SAS, and I said, who's the better unit, the SAS or the SBS? And he said, the SAS. And I said, why? And he said, because the SBS is second best squadron. No, second best service. Second best service.
Yeah.
And it made me laugh. And I said, I'm never going to say that to any of those guys.
I was on my education, and this was up in Preston. You had to do a normal education course. And I remember you had to do a talk about your unit, and I talked about Suez, actually. I had to give a speech about Suez, and then I got asked if I could just talk about a Sabre squadron and let people know what it was. And I did it, and there was an officer, a senior officer in the audience. He went, can you tell us what's the difference between the SAS and the SBS? And I thought I'd be a twat here. Right? So I said, well, the SBS, I said,
one flies in here, one swims.
The SBS are a fine fighting unit, but they fight in the water, and they conduct their business in the water, and they dive and they swim and they do all sorts of cool stuff in the water. I said, the SBS are exactly the same. I said, but we walk on it.
That's funny.
Yeah. Sorry to my SBS friends. But banter's banter.
No, but that's the one thing that I've always noticed about the Marines, the Parachute Regiment, SAS, SBS, the banter.
There's a lot of banter there.
It's great. I mean, and we've lost that out of society right now.
You're not allowed to have a sense of humour in society anymore. You're not allowed to point out a fucking difference with anybody. And right, I get the bullying thing. I understand the bullying thing, but I also get the banter thing. Do you know what I mean? And I've seen the darkest of humour as well, which sometimes helps people get over the lump. Do you know what I mean? So I've seen it both ends of the scale. So, I think, the hardest job in the world at the moment is to be a comedian, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's an extremely hard job.
You haven't, in your 55 years of being alive, nobody's ever misgendered you, have they?
I have a story. I have a misgender story.
Listen.
I had 2 passports, right? I had 2 passports in the day. You could apply for 3, I think, but I had 2.
Right.
And anyway, one I used to keep completely pristine, Because and that would be sort of like that would be my backup if the other one was in on a visa and I got asked for a trip. So anyway, this one goes in for a visa to somewhere, I can't remember what it was, and I had to go to Doha.
Right.
Picks up my passport, gets me back, gets to Doha, hands over my passport, and stood there, and the bloke starts chuckling.
Right.
Then he calls his mate over, and they're looking at me like that. He starts chuckling as well. He goes away. It ends up about 4 or 5 of them there, and they're all looking at me like that, chuckling. And I'm like, what's the matter? What's the matter, fellas? What's going on? Are you Philip Campion? Yes, I am Philip Campion. Are you male or female? I said, my fucking bloke, you know. And he's like looking down as if to go, can I have a feel? Like, I'm like, no. So I jokingly went, oh, no. He's saying like this. He passes back my passport. In the little box that says M or F, it said fucking F. Yeah.
So there you hear it. We got a Criminal Connection podcast exclusive. Big Phil Campion. There's a lady.
Don't you know?
and
Yeah.
When you know with all these different things now, have you got any kids, Phil?
Yeah. So I've got 2 of my own and 3 stepkids.
And are they all sort of still at school? Or are they all?
No,
right,
Jesus.
all
Yeah, the oldest. I've got a 19-year-old grandson.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, they're all ages. They're all up and down. Yeah,
because I've got
my youngest is 23. The oldest is about 36, I think.
Yeah, because I've still got kids that are at school now.
Yeah,
and obviously there's this big thing at schools now where they identify as cats and dogs and trees and all this sort of stuff, and it's just insane.
It is a pretty crazy world. I can't get my head around it. You know, call me old school, whatever. Do you know what I mean? If you've got
but if you was at school now, Phil, would you identify? What would you identify as?
An horrible. And they're not going to say I'm a tear up all day, can I? It's not my fault, but I'm horrible. I'm an horrible. What do you mean? So I identify. Please don't mess with my gender. All right, I'm an horrible. And my prefix is I get some. All right. Can you imagine that? Why can't I do that? They can do it.
I think you. I think you're onto something here, Phil.
I don't know. I struggle to get my head around it. I do try and understand it. And I have actually had a friend who's one of his kids has actually come home saying something like that. And like, you've got to try and understand it.
But do you think the kids are doing it? Because I actually was trying to work this out the other day. And I do think that if someone at school has said to me, Terry, you can identify as, like you said, I'll identify as a horrible cunt.
Exactly, I would take the piss.
So I don't know whether it's a wind-up or whether kids do it.
I think there's going to be an element of that. There is, right, and this is what, so you could argue, and this will probably rile a few people up, right? So is everybody that claims PIP genuinely claiming that PIP, or are some of them having your pants down a little bit? Do you know what I mean? Are some of them going, yeah, there's something really wrong with it, it's not? Are some of them playing the game? Do you know what I mean? So when it comes to that, it's exactly the same, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There'll be some people there who genuinely, desperately need help. There'll be other people there thinking, actually, I can get off maths and English if I do that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So they'll be taking the piss a little bit, won't they? Do you know what I mean? And that will happen. And I don't care what anybody says, that will happen. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not the only one who thinks like that. I can't be. Do you know what I mean? And whether I think right or wrong, other people will probably have had the same thought as me.
Right. Absolutely, 100%.
Do you know what I mean? So in that respect, and then what happens is then the people that really need the fucking help don't get the help they should need because other people are detracting away from them who possibly don't need the same level of help or help at all.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a big thing where children were basically being sort of fed this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you could be in the wrong body, you could be the wrong sex, whatever. But you know, now I think what's happening, there's a lot of these kids that have actually gone down that road and had whatever the treatment is or took the pills as they've then fully gone the other way. They're now sort of
they want to go the other way.
Actually, I don't want to be, and it's probably it's a bit late now. Do you know what I mean?
It's
I don't think kids are really in the right frame of mind to make that decision.
No, and if they are thinking along those lines, then perhaps there is something going on. So in that respect, the brakes should be put on, and proper mediation should be put in place that's unbiased, that can actually help the child,
100%, rather
than encourage the child. Do you know what I mean? I don't agree with that. I think some elements get it wrong now and again. Do you know what I mean? I genuinely think that, and I know people. But for me, it's the emperor's clothes. Do you know what I mean? He's naked. No, he's not. He's got clothes. He's naked.
Right.
So it's the emperor's clothes. We can see what's going on, can't we? We know what's going on. It's not. I'm not making it up. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think there's an element of that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's completely right, it's completely wrong, but there is an element of that in there.
But I think with a lot of these things, there's this one size fits all mentality, and I don't think it works. I think, like you said, if somebody's, when I was 5 or 6, I used to, put makeup on, I'd put a wig on, and I'd walk around in my mum's shoes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was, confused about my sexuality. I just enjoyed doing it because it was a fun thing for kids to do. Like, why do kids dress up as Spider-Man and these different things?
That, if you did want to do that, so what? I genuinely don't care. Do you know what I mean? But it gets to the point where other people's behaviour affects other people. And I don't know. I think they promote it in the wrong light, and then they sort of like block you from saying what you think. You're not allowed to say anything anymore. Do you know what I mean?
And one thing I wanted to pick up on, because I just thought this when we were talking, when you obviously was training in Marbella at the MTK for the boxing, obviously that was an Irish gym, wasn't it? So,
it was, yeah.
Did you? Did they accept you for who you were when you went there to training?
Yeah, I think I went there as a boxer. I went there with the blessing of some really nice people. They probably wouldn't be happy if I mentioned their names on here, but
okay.
I went there with their blessing, and nobody said anything to me. But no one even mentioned about my background, and they knew.
It's a great club, though.
It's a great club. There's some great people in there, and I met some really good people, and I went in there to box. I went in there to train and to box and to do my thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think people respected that, and I respected them for what they were. And there were people there, with tattoos. You can't hide your tattoos. You know what I mean? I know what your tattoo means. You know what I mean? But it was never taught the same as I've got tattoos.
Right.
Not SAS ones. That would be far too much. But do you know what I mean? I've got tattoos that denote I'm in the military.
Right.
And no one ever said anything to me. And I never mentioned it. I never brought the issue up. Never. And it wasn't an issue.
And for anyone who's watching or listening to the show, if you was going to bring up, because I always like to impart some wisdom, and obviously you've had a great life, Phil. You're one of the only people that's passed those 3 selections. You've been a mercenary. You've probably seen more than the average Joe, and you're now doing this great stuff for this charity. It's the Army Cadet Force, right? So
I was the official ambassador for the Army Cadet Force. They're champion for about 5 years. They only give you 5 years.
Okay.
And then someone else moves on or whatever. So I then right now I represent the military preparation training colleges. So I'm their ambassador, which is gained about giving youth a chance, really. Do you know what I mean? Some of them will end up in the military. Some of them want to go to the military, but some of these kids are completely lost.
Right.
Have got nothing that, their academic ability isn't the greatest. They might not have the concentration span that other people have got. They might just be looking for something different in life. Give it a go. Do you know what I mean? Get in. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's reaching kids like that, because if these organisations don't reach these kids, the gangs will reach them.
Right.
Do you know, all that sort of stuff, and that's a road you don't like to see people.
It's definitely good. It's definitely good to give the kids some alternatives.
Yeah, definitely.
And
but I have a thing with role models, and I say, you can't be what you can't see. And a lot of these kids, as I was when I was a kid, aren't exposed to people they want to be like.
Right.
I mean, I always say, I wanted to play football. I love football. I could have played for England, but I was shit.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I aspire. I would love to have been a footballer, but the reality was I was never going to be a footballer because I wasn't good enough. I could play a little bit, but I wasn't good enough to be a footballer. What else could I do? I didn't know. I always say the first real man that I met was my section commander in training.
Wow.
He was an extremely stand-up fellow. He had medals and all sorts of stuff, and I was like, "Fucking hell, look at him." Do you know what I mean? I stood there in front of him, and he was fair. He treated you fairly. If you did something well, he gave you a pat on the head. If you did something wrong, he gave you a pat in the face. Right. Do you know what I mean? He let you know. He would tell you he was right or wrong. There was no grey areas with him. There was no mincing about. There was no fucking all maybe. It was like, you've done that well, you've done that wrong. You are this, you are that. It is that. It is this. He was great, and I wanted to be like him.
And if you was going to impart some advice, what would it be for anybody? And it could be life advice. It could be setting up a business advice.
I think find something you enjoy, and you'll never do a day's work in your life. Find something you enjoy, and if you're struggling, look for it until you find it. I'm not saying don't pay your bills, don't get a job, don't do, because I've had to do jobs. I've had washing up jobs and all sorts in my time. Do you know what I mean? I've had to pay my bills, but I've always strove. Even when I was filling the skips, I'm always looking to find something that I want to do that will get me further in life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That will pull me out of whatever situation I'm in. And you don't get a lot of time on this planet. Do you know what I mean? And so to not enjoy it or do something you don't like, hell,
And nobody knows how many turkeys they got left.
Exactly. That's exactly it. You don't know. And it's like, you can sit there and just accept it and just, or you won't achieve nothing sat on your sofa.
So what's your focus now, Phil? What's your...
Look, I've now carved out a bit of a sort of like niche in this industry. Do you know what I mean? I've got my own podcast, a radio station. So, we're doing some quite good stuff with that. We're doing some cool stuff with that.
If people want to watch your podcast, Phil.
Yeah, we get.
So people can, if you can let us know where they can follow you on social media.
Yeah, so if you go to forceradio.live, that's our website. You can download an app, Force Radio, and you'll get all the stuff from there. So that's going really well. I tread the boards on the cruise liners and all that sort of stuff, which is good fun. I enjoy doing that. I do plenty of stuff, media-wise. The stuff I still want to do, I'd love to do a reality show. I'd love to do Strictly Come Dancing or something like that. I'd love to.
I'd love to see that.
That'd be a bit of me. That'd be a bit of me. Dancing on Ice or Strictly Come Dancing is a bit of me all day. I'd have some of that. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And then outside of that, I'd like to do a proper acting role.
Right, wicked.
In a blockbuster. Do you know what I mean? A proper acting role.
I've got low budget films. I haven't got any blockbusters yet.
Get me a low budget. Get me a low budget. I'll smash that for you.
But it sounds like, through all of that stuff that you've done, you've done all this great stuff for charity. You're now obviously an advocate for mental health.
So that's the most important thing for me. And I always do joke I've had all the fame without the fortune. Do you know what I mean? Because
Phil.
I do spend a lot of time. And I think that I've got a position now where people listen to what I say. I had a young man come up to me a few weeks back, and he just passed out as a paratrooper, berry on his head, and he said, "I've got to thank you, Phil." Thank me for what? He said 3 years ago, he said, "My dad sent you a message on Instagram asking you to do me a video message to sort my life out." He said, "And you sent me that message." He said, "And now I'm in the parachute regiment." That to me outweighs any salary or any bag of money you could put on the table in front of me. For me, that is, I've made a difference in someone's life. And that for me is more important than, currency for me can be in deed and can be in how you conduct yourself and how you spend your time on this planet, as opposed to how much you can get and what you can buy and all the materialistic stuff. It's nice, don't get me wrong, I like things, but my real currency now is time. Time for other people, time for myself, time for my family, time for my grandkids, and all that sort of stuff. That's my real currency in life. That's what I'm about now. Do you know what I mean?
Amazing. Well, I've really enjoyed our chat, Phil. I think we feel like we've only just like skimmed the top of it, but it was just great hearing some of the banter, hearing some of your stories, and obviously what you're up to now. But I wish you all the best, and as soon as I get a role, I will be giving you a call. Let me
know. Big Phil on the big screen.
Big Phil's having it
large.
And then you've accomplished everything, then, didn't you? There's not really anything else to.
Then I'll just try and make it all better. Do you know what I mean?
Get the fortune then. Get the fortune.
That's what, we'll go after the fortune. Yeah, after that, I'll say time. Give me some more time.
Brilliant.
You know what I mean?
But Phil, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, lovely.
Really good to meet you, mate. Right. Thank you.
Nice one.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Criminal Connection podcast. Big Phil Campion, Special Forces legend. What an epic guest. Make sure you tune in next week. We've got another amazing guest. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we will see you on the other side.